Well, we are almost finished with our CMS. There's just a few more things that we need to do. For example, we need to finish what we started in the previous lesson, and that is displaying our published posts to anyone who wants to come to our website. We also need to add some polish to the admin portion of our CMS. Now, we're going to try to do all of these things in this lesson, but if not, we will just work on the published posts in this lesson, and then we will work on the admin section in the next lesson. Now, I will be the first to admit that I am horrible with design, not just web design, but user interface design in general. I was not blessed with that talent. So when it came to coming up with markup that looked halfway decent, I didn't want to use anything that I created because otherwise it would just be white background with black text, and that's not very nice. So I took some of the resources from the template that you get whenever you create a new ASP.NET website. If you'll remember, whenever we first created our website, we deleted a lot of resources. Well, I took some of those resources, made a few modifications here and there, and I used that as the basis. So the site layout is almost the exact site layout that you get whenever you create a new ASP.NET website. There's just a few modifications, like for example, the site title is Simple CMS, the menu includes home and then admin, so we no longer have to type /admin in the location bar. I also removed the links for register and log in because we don't really want to do that on our normal pages. But other than that, it is largely the same. Now, the CSS for our website is unchanged from the ASP.NET website template. If we look at that, we have all of the classes, all of the rules and everything that come with the ASP.NET website template. So we have all of these at our disposal. So let's start with our default.cshtml. In the previous lesson, we started to display our posts, but we didn't show everything. Like, for example, we need the author of a post. We also need to display the tags of a post. And we also need to do a few other things that we will get to in a few moments. But let's first of all change some of this markup. Now, we want to display the title, and usually after you display the title, you display the author of the post. So we're going to change the title to an H1 element, and then we are going to use an H2 element to display the author. So here we want @post and then username. And then we are going to wrap this H1 and H2 element in an H group element, and we want to give this a class of title. This is going to put both the H1 and the H2 on the same line. And then we have our content, which is fine, and then usually you will find the tags at the end of the post's content. Well, let's create another div element, and let's give this a class of post-tags. And then we want a UL element, and then we want to loop over all of the tags for this post. So we will use a for each loop, var tag in post.tags, and then we want to output an li element that contains a link. Now, we will worry about this URL here in a minute, but let's just output tag.name first. Okay, so this URL, we need something that is nice to look at and something that kind of makes sense. So let's say that anything that is not on the main page is part of the archive. So we could start off with /archive, and then we need to specify that we are going to look for a tag, and then we could have the tag. So here we would have @tag and then URL friendly name. Now, I'm also taking this approach because I'm hoping that we should be able to use that tag class to get the tag information, but we will see if that is going to work. So this should give us our output. Now, we don't have this post-tags. So let's go to our CSS and let's add that at the bottom of this style sheet, and that's a lot of styles. So let's add a post-tags, and we want to display the li elements inline. We also want to remove any bullets. So let's make this not only for the class post tags, let's also add li, and we want to display inline. We also want to set the list style to none. Let's set the margin to 0, and then the padding to 0 as well. And then let's save this, and we will run this. Let's see what this looks like. So we should see our post, and we do. We see first post and then the author, admin. Let's add a by before admin. So let's go back and let's say that this is by and then at post username. So let's refresh, and now we have first post by admin. This content is for the first post, but we don't have our tags. So let's go to our admin, and now we have a nicely styled login form, although we need to make these labels, and it would be nice to have those on top of the input elements, but we will see what the CSS gives us. So let's log in as admin and password, and we need to go to /post. I'm looking forward to when we have links that take us all to these different places. Let's click on edit, and let's select both of these tags. So now we should have both of those tags. We do. Let's go back to the default and let's see what we get. We have first tag and second tag, and these are a little off. At least I would like to have these left justified. And it would also be nice to say that, hey, these are the tags. So before the UL element, let's say tags, and let's see what that looks like now. So let's refresh, and let's see, that's all on 2 lines. Well, you know, that's okay. We'll just stick with this for now, because frankly, we have more important things to do. Okay, so let's look at the URL here. We have archive/tag/first tag. So let's make an archive.cshtml. So let's stop running our application, and let's add a new content page called archive. And I want to test something first. So let's output at tag.mode, and let's see what this is going to give us. Let's actually do this inside of this div element. So let's run this application. Instead of going to archive, we want to go to just the default. Let's click on one of these tag links, and we have tag. Oh, this is going to be nice. So this means that we can use that tag class in order to get the current tag, and then that would give us an easy way to get the posts for a given tag. And the great thing is we can also use the post class. So we could change archive/post, and then we could have a slug, and then we could display the post that way. We would have all of the information already there. So let's go back to our default.cshtml, and let's add a link for our post, the individual blog post. So in the h1 element for the title, let's add our a element. This link is going to be /archive/post, and then the slug, so at post.slug. And then for the text of this link, we want the title. So let's just grab this closing a element. Let's also break this up on multiple lines just so that it's easier to see. And then that will give us our link and our title. So we can go to archive.cshtml. We want to get the mode, and we can use tag.mode or we could use post.mode. It really doesn't matter because it's going to give us the value that we need. Let's also set the layout page. We want this to be tilde/ and then underscore site layout.cshtml. And then we want to check the value of mode. If mode is post, then we want to display the post. So let's use an if statement, mode equals to post. Then we want to render the post. Now we are already rendering a post here in default.cshtml. So it kind of makes sense to take this div element that we have with this post container and put this inside of its own CSHTML file. So let's create a new, let's make this a content page. We will call it _post. And this is going to contain the markup for our post. So let's just paste everything in here. Now we no longer have this at post, but we should be able to use at model because we can pass the quote-unquote model to this CSHTML file, and that would work just as well. So we no longer have this MD transform. So we will need to think of how to bring that object into this file, because we could put it inside of here, but if we are displaying multiple posts, we don't want to create that object over and over and over again. There's just really no reason to do that. So let's comment line 9. And then we will come to that in a moment. So let's go back to default.cshtml. Let's get rid of all of that markup. And here we want to render page, and we want to pass in the path, so // and then underscore post.cshtml. And then we can pass in data. So we can pass multiple things. So we should be able to pass not only the post, but also MD. And then we could do the same thing inside of the archive.cshtml. So if mode is post, then we render the page, and we don't have this MD object yet. And here, instead of post, we could use post.current. So let's run this, and let's see if this works. Let's select default so that the default page is going to load. And hopefully we're not going to get any exceptions, and everything is just going to work like it does. So if we click on this link, we should go to our archive, post, and then first post, and there we have that post. And so now we just need to get access to this markdown object. Well, let's see if we can access that through our page data property. So let's first of all go to archive.cshtml, and let's pass in a new markdown sharp.markdown object so that we have something to work with inside of this underscore post file. And let's also add in a code block at the top because we want to get that markdown object. So let's say var md equals to page data, and that would be at an index of 1. And then from here we should be able to uncomment line 12, and that should work. So let's go back to the browser, let's refresh, and hopefully we will see the content, and we do. So if we go back to home, then we see that as well. Let's add another blog post just so that we can see both of them in the default page and then the single post inside of the individual pages. So let's log in once again, and we want to go to admin/post/new, and for the title, this is the second. For the content, let's just say content. The slug, we don't care. The date published, let's say April 15th of 2014. That is well in the past, at least for me. And let's submit. So now we have both of these. Let's go back home. We should see both of our blog posts, or both of our posts here. We have the first post and the second post. If we click on the second post, then we only see the second post. And now we need to do something with the tag. So if you click on a tag, then we get all of the posts that are associated with that tag. So let's go back to archive.cshtml. We want to add an else if, and we want to check to see if mode is equal to tag. Then we want to get all of the posts associated with that tag. Now I don't think we have a method to do that. So let's stop running. Let's go to our app_code and data. Let's see, we are selecting what are essentially going to be posts. So let's look at our post repository, and we want to see if we have anything that we have get by tags, and no, we don't. So let's add one. Let's call it get published posts by tag. So we can take our current get published posts method and use that as a basis. Let's change the name to by tag. Let's add a string parameter of tag name, and we want to search based upon this tag name. So we basically just need to add on to our where clause. So let's add another line here. Let's add a space, and then let's concatenate, and we want t.url friendly name equals to whatever value was specified as tag name. So we will use the parameter at 0. Then we will pass in tag name, and that should work for us. So now let's go back to our archive.cshtml. Let's create a variable called posts, and we want to use our post repository class and the get published posts by tag, and we want our tag. Now we can get that with tag.friendlyname. That will give us our posts, and then we just need to loop over them. So for each var post in posts, and then we basically want to do what we did with the mode of post. We want to render that page. So instead of passing post.current, we will just pass in post, and then our new marked down object, and that should work. So let's run this and let's see if this is going to work. So let's run. We want to go to our default page, so let's go there first. And then we will click on one of the tags. Let's do the first tag. We should only see the first post, which is good. We are missing the second tag, but I guess that's okay. Let's click on the second tag and we should see both of these posts, first post and second post. So our post is working and our tags are working. Maybe we should do something whenever we just go to /archive. Perhaps we should show all of the posts. So let's go back to Visual Studio and let's check to see if mode is null or empty. So another else if mode, or rather we will use the string is null or empty method passing in mode. Then we want to display all of our posts. So let's essentially grab the code that we have for the tag mode. Let's paste it in. And instead of calling get published posts by tag, we will just call get published posts. Now let's modify this method so that we can pass in an integer value for the amount of posts that we want. This way we can show like 10 posts on the main page, and then for the archive we could just show all of them. So let's go back to our post repository. Let's find that method and let's add an integer parameter called count. And let's give this a default value of 0. And if count is 0, then we want to select all of our records. Otherwise, we want to select only the amount of records that were provided to this method. So let's create a variable called top clause. And we want to check to see if count is greater than 0. If it is, then we want a value for top clause. We want top and then the value that was supplied to our count parameter. So we will use the string.format method so that we can inject that value. Otherwise, we want just an empty string so that then we can use this top clause inside of our SQL statement. So we can use another format identifier of 0. We will use string.format here. And then for the second parameter to string.format, we will use top clause. So we will have something if count is greater than 0. Otherwise, we will have nothing for top clause and it will just select everything. So let's go back to the browser. Let's refresh here on archive and we should see our 2 posts. And we do. So let's go back to Visual Studio and let's change what we do for the default. And let's say that we just want to select the first. So let's go back, let's refresh. We should only see 1. And that is not the case, is it? Except we are still at archive. That's a problem. So by going back to home, we have just 1, and that was exactly what we wanted. So let's change this to 10 so that we can show the 10 latest blog posts, although I don't think we have an order by clause. Let's go back, and no, we don't. So let's add an order by clause. We need to order by date published descending. That way we get the latest blog posts and we display those. We need to add that order by clause to a lot of places, not only here for get published posts, but also get published posts by tag. So let's just paste that in there. The get methods are fine. The get all method, I don't think we have it there, so we don't, but we do have the order by, so that's okay. And let's make sure everything else is covered. So we have published posts, get posts by tag, get all, get, and everything should be okay. So let's go back to the browser. Let's refresh. We see just the 2 posts that we have now for the default, first post and second post. So now let's finish up the public portion of our application. We have the post and tag stuff done. Let's go to our login page and let's modify this form, so that instead of just having P elements, we can have a label for and then username. So let's change this to username. And of course, we want the value of username here. Let's go ahead and let's add an ID with username as well, because that is what you typically find and that is what is considered correct. And then we will do the same thing for the password. So let's just grab that label and paste it. Let's grab the value of password, paste that there, and then the name. This is for password, and we want ID equals to password. So let's go to our login page and let's see how this looks. Let's see if we need to modify anything else. So if we go to admin, we have username on top and then password and then login. And I think that that looks great. Let's go to the logout page. If we log out, we should redirect, I guess, back to home, because if we are logging out, there's really no need to go back to the login page. So after we clear out the session, let's go ahead and do response.redirect, and we just want to go to home. So we can do // and that will take us home. So our public portion of our CMS is complete. We are able to view a list of posts, both the current and then the archive. We can view posts singularly, and we can also view them by tag. In the next lesson, we will add polish to the admin portion of our CMS. We need to add some JavaScript, and we also need to modify the markup. Now, I'm going to do a lot of work off screen. I'm going to change the markup of the forms so that each field has a label for that field, and then each field will also have an ID attribute equal to the value of the name attribute.